"Can I stay here just for tonight?" asked the single mom to the single dad CEO. His answer was, "Snow fell in heavy, silent sheets the night everything changed, the kind of snow that muffles the world and turns every sound into a secret." A modern house glowed like a promise against the cold, its warm light spilling across a glass door as a man in a tailored suit reached for the handle. Outside, a young woman stood trembling, her coat thin, her arms wrapped around a sleepy little boy whose breath puffed white in the air. She had nowhere left to go, and the night had no mercy. Fate had carried her to this door, and whatever happened next would decide whether hope still existed for her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet miracles that happen when people choose compassion, take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that humanity still matters. Daniel Carter had built his life on control. As the CEO of a fast-growing technology firm based in Colorado, he lived by calendars, quarterly reports, and carefully calculated risks. His days were a blur of boardrooms and flights, and his nights were often spent alone in the silence of a house too big for one person. He was a single father, raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, after his wife passed away years earlier, and everything he did revolved around protecting that fragile balance of success and stability he had fought so hard to maintain. Tonight, he had returned late, exhausted, his mind still tangled in numbers and negotiations, unaware that the most important decision of his life was waiting just beyond the door. Emily Walker had once believed her life would be simple. She grew up in a small town in Ohio, went to church every Sunday, married her high school sweetheart, and dreamed of a home filled with laughter. But dreams do not always survive reality. Her husband left when their son, Noah, was barely a year old, disappearing into a world that had no room for responsibility. Emily worked 2 jobs after that, cleaning offices at night and serving coffee in the mornings, barely managing rent and daycare. When her landlord sold the building unexpectedly, she lost her apartment within weeks. Friends offered couches for a night or two, but sympathy has limits when bills and lives are complicated. By the time winter arrived, Emily and Noah were carrying their lives in a single suitcase. That night, the shelter was full, and the temperature was dropping fast. Emily had walked for hours, her feet numb, Noah's small arms clinging to her neck as she whispered prayers she was no longer sure God could hear. She remembered a name from a flyer she once cleaned off an office bulletin board, a company logo she recognized from downtown, and an address that stuck in her mind only because it sounded important. She did not know Daniel Carter personally, but she knew he sponsored the church food drive last Thanksgiving. Desperation has a way of pushing pride aside, and hope, even a fragile one, can guide tired feet through the snow. Inside the house, Daniel hesitated. He saw the exhaustion etched into Emily's face, the fear she tried to hide, and the way Noah's head rested against her shoulder as if he trusted her to keep the world from falling apart. Daniel felt a familiar ache in his chest, the same one he felt the night he held Lily after the funeral, promising her everything would be okay even when he had no idea how to make that true. He had learned to build walls since then, emotional and physical ones, believing they kept his family safe. But walls also keep out the people who need us most. Emily's pride burned as she stood there, the snow melting into her hair, her heart pounding with every second of silence. She had never imagined asking a stranger for help, let alone one whose life clearly belonged to a different world. But her son shifted in her arms, his small face flushed from the cold, and she knew she would endure any humiliation if it meant keeping him warm. She did not beg or explain much. She simply stood, eyes full of quiet desperation, waiting for an answer that could change everything or crush what little strength she had left. Daniel opened the door wider, letting warmth spill into the night. He told himself it was just for one night, just until morning, just until he could help her find somewhere safe. Yet something deeper moved within him, something that had been dormant since his wife's passing. He remembered sermons about loving thy neighbor, about faith without works being empty. He remembered Lily asking once why God lets people be lonely. Tonight, perhaps, he was being given a chance to answer that question with action instead of words. Emily stepped inside, overwhelmed by the warmth and the soft glow of a home that felt impossibly distant from her own reality. The smell of clean wood and fresh coffee wrapped around her like a forgotten memory. She lowered Noah carefully, brushing snow from his hat, her hands shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. Tears threatened, but she swallowed them, unwilling to cry in front of a stranger who had already done more than she could have hoped for. As the night deepened, Daniel watched Emily from a distance, noticing the way she checked on Noah every few minutes, the way she folded her worn coat neatly as if appearances still mattered. He saw strength in her, not weakness, and it unsettled him. This was not someone looking for charity, this was someone fighting to survive. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, curious eyes wide, and Daniel felt a flicker of fear. He worried about safety, about boundaries, about the fragile routine he had built for his daughter. But Lily simply smiled, sensing no threat, only people who looked like they needed kindness. Emily did not sleep much that night. She lay awake on the couch, listening to the hum of the heater, Noah curled against her chest, breathing softly. For the first time in weeks, she was not cold. For the first time in months, she was not afraid of the night. Gratitude washed over her in waves so strong it almost hurt. She whispered a prayer of thanks, not knowing what tomorrow would bring, but feeling, for the first time in a long while, that tomorrow might exist. Morning arrived quietly, sunlight reflecting off the snow and filling the house with a soft, hopeful glow. Daniel prepared breakfast, something simple, the kind he made for Lily on school days. Emily watched, uncertain of her place, ready to leave the moment she was asked. But Daniel did not rush her. Instead, he asked gentle questions about Noah, about where they were from, about what she hoped for. Emily answered honestly, her voice steady, her story unfolding like a confession she had carried alone for too long. Daniel listened, truly listened, and something inside him shifted. He saw his own struggles reflected in hers, different circumstances, same exhaustion. He realized that success had not insulated him from pain, and poverty had not erased her dignity. They were both parents trying to protect their children from a world that could be unforgiving. In that shared understanding, a quiet bond formed, fragile but real. Days turned into a week, and what was meant to be temporary became something neither of them questioned. Daniel helped Emily find a job through a local program his company supported, and Noah began attending a nearby preschool. Lily and Noah played together easily, their laughter filling corners of the house that had been silent for years. Emily contributed however she could, cooking, cleaning, refusing to be a burden. She planned to leave as soon as she saved enough, determined not to overstay her welcome. But Daniel found himself dreading that day. He noticed how the house felt warmer with Emily's presence, how Lily laughed more, how even he slept better. He wrestled with guilt, with fear of letting someone close again, with the memory of loss that still haunted him. Trust, he had learned, was dangerous. Yet love, he was beginning to remember, was worth the risk. Emily, too, felt the change. She saw Daniel not as a CEO or a savior, but as a man carrying grief quietly, loving his daughter fiercely, trying to do right even when it was hard. She fought feelings she believed she had no right to feel, focusing instead on building a future for Noah. Still, late at night, she wondered if miracles could happen twice, if a single night of kindness could turn into something lasting. The turning point came unexpectedly, as such moments often do. A storm knocked out power across the neighborhood, and the four of them sat together by candlelight, sharing simple food and stories. Laughter echoed against the walls, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to matter. Daniel looked around and realized that this imperfect, unplanned family moment, was what he had been missing. Not control, not success, but connection. Near the end of this story, if it is touching your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring stories like this to life and reminds others that kindness still changes the world. Emily eventually found her footing. Winter slowly loosened its grip on Colorado, but inside Daniel Carter's home, something deeper than the seasons was changing. What began as a single night of mercy had quietly reshaped 4 lives, and none of them could fully explain how it happened without believing that something greater was guiding them. After Emily moved into her small apartment nearby, Daniel told himself it was the responsible ending. He had helped her stand on her own, just as he promised. He was a CEO again, back to structure, back to rules. Yet the silence in his house returned with a heaviness he hadn't felt in months. Lily asked every evening when Emily and Noah would visit again, and Daniel caught himself making excuses just to invite them over for dinner. The truth was simple but frightening: his heart had opened, and now it refused to close. Emily tried to convince herself that distance was healthy. She focused on work, on Noah's routine, on building a stable future with her own hands. But every time she passed Daniel's street, she remembered the warmth of that first night, the way Lily laughed at the breakfast table, the way Daniel listened to her without judgment. She had survived abandonment once. She promised herself she would not risk her heart again. Still, loneliness has a way of whispering doubts into even the strongest resolve. Life tested them again sooner than expected. Noah fell sick one night with a high fever, and panic clawed at Emily's chest as she rushed him to the emergency room. She called Daniel without thinking, her hands shaking too much to dial anyone else. Daniel arrived before she even finished speaking, his suit replaced by worry, his status meaningless in the face of a child's pain. He stayed all night, holding Noah when Emily's legs gave out, reminding her to breathe when fear threatened to swallow her whole. That night broke the last of Emily's defenses. She realized Daniel was not helping out of obligation or pity, he was there because he cared. Truly cared. And Daniel, watching Emily cradle her son with fierce love despite exhaustion and fear, saw a strength more powerful than any boardroom victory. He saw the kind of woman his late wife would have admired, the kind of mother Lily deserved in her life. As weeks passed, their lives intertwined naturally. Church on Sundays. Shared dinners on busy weeknights. School pickups when work ran late. Nothing was rushed, nothing spoken aloud, but everything felt intentional. The children bonded like siblings, unaware of the fragile emotional tightrope the adults walked every day. Daniel struggled with guilt, questioning whether moving on meant betraying his late wife's memory. Emily struggled with fear, wondering if happiness was something she was allowed to want. The breaking point came one quiet evening when Lily asked a question neither adult was prepared for. She asked why homes had to be separate when hearts didn't feel that way. Children, in their innocence, often speak truths adults spend years avoiding. That night, Daniel sat alone after everyone left, staring at the front door, the same door he had opened on a snowy night months ago. He finally understood that love does not replace what was lost, it honors it by continuing. Daniel made a decision that scared him more than any business risk he had ever taken. He chose vulnerability. He invited Emily for a walk the next evening, the air crisp, the sky painted in soft twilight colors. He spoke honestly, without promises he couldn't keep, without grand gestures. He told her that opening his door that night saved him as much as it saved her. That he had been surviving, not living. That his home had felt empty until she and Noah filled it with life again. Emily listened, tears silently tracing her cheeks. She confessed her fears, her past, her terror of trusting again. She admitted that she had felt safe with him from the very first night, and that safety had grown into something deeper, something she had tried desperately to ignore. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that love did not always come with an expiration date. They did not rush into labels or promises. They chose patience, honesty, and faith. Slowly, intentionally, Emily and Noah moved back into Daniel's home, not as guests, not as charity cases, but as family. The house transformed completely. Photos filled the walls. Shoes cluttered the hallway. Laughter echoed where silence once lived. Daniel's success no longer felt hollow, and Emily's struggles no longer felt solitary. Challenges did not disappear. There were arguments born from fear, moments of doubt, financial worries, and lingering grief. But this time, no one faced them alone. Daniel learned that strength was not control but presence. Emily learned that asking for help did not diminish her worth. Together, they taught their children that love is built not on perfection, but on choosing each other every day. Years later, on another snowy night, Daniel stood at the same door, watching Emily decorate the porch with Lily and Noah. The cold no longer felt threatening, it felt nostalgic. He realized that the most important deal of his life was not signed in a boardroom, but sealed the moment he opened his door to a stranger who asked for one night of shelter. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. And before you go, leave a comment telling us whether you believe that kindness can turn strangers into family.